Oh, fuck, I have to do it without the glasses.
Welcome back to our third episode of Two Blokes, a Beer and a Podcast. Craig's with us. Craig, how's your week been, buddy?
Not too bad, mate. Not too bad. We're doing a day early today, and the Tigers just come off a win, so mate, pretty good.
Happy days, happy days. You can see you're rocking your old Balmain jersey there, mate. It
Mate,
looks
this is the
looking a little tight.
this is mate, this is the 2000 year 2000 West Tigers first orange strip they wore round two. Got it when
Wow.
I was 16. I got a few signatures on it, but if we can hurry up and get through this recording because I can barely breathe in it. It's that tight. So around the stomach anyway.
Oh, I love it, mate. I love it. When was the last time you wore it? About 16?
Probably about 16, I reckon. Yeah. We'll see
Yeah,
how I go when I crack a beer into my Balmain Tigers glass. I'll
beautiful.
no doubt we'll get tighter and tighter.
I love it. Well, thank you for joining us today. Of course, this is Two Blokes of Beer and a Podcast. It's the lighter side of rugby league, here to have a bit of fun, talk a bit of off-field footy, a bit of sport in general, and just have a good time. Now, Craig, what beer have you got today for us?
Mate, I'm gonna crack a Chur Brewing Company
Oh,
Brain Smiles Hazy Pale Ale.
sounds like
And
it's
it looks,
from New Zealand.
looks all right. It looks all right. Why do you put me on the spot and ask me questions like that?
Just because it says
New
Chur.
Zealand, you picked
Yeah,
it.
there you
You
go.
picked it.
Yep,
Yeah, oh, there, of course. Yeah.
yep.
Yeah,
Very
well done,
nice.
bro.
Very nice. Well, I myself have an Asahi today.
That looks
Love.
cracked already.
Yeah, mate. I've just opened it. I haven't drunk any yet. About to pour
Oh, nice.
into the old glass. Let's see if I still got the bartending skill that I had.
All right.
Oh, not
Oh,
a
look at
bad head
that.
there. Beautiful. All right. Well, before we have a sip, let's get into a bit of fun. Now, I want to touch on a sport that we don't follow too much with rugby league, but it's soccer. And obviously, the Matildas, mate, had the semi final, lost to England 3-1. But I just want to say, what a great effort for the girls to even get that far. They do have to play Sweden tonight to be
Yeah.
third place, bronze medal, not too bad. But mate, I watched the game. I had a nice anytime jam on. Had Sam Kerr anytime, Russo the uh, English striker to score. So I had both of them, got both of them, and then I had both teams to score a goal, got that, and then I just needed Australia to win. Would have been a nice little 350 off $10, but couldn't crack it.
Oh,
But mate,
mate,
what do you think of the soccer?
I had Matilda's 13 plus, so I was no hope. I got a funny story for you, Joey, about that. So my daughter's 9, comes over just on the Matildas bandwagon, and like great to see like what they have done for kids, teenagers out there. Like my daughter didn't really have interest in soccer. Now she knows
Yeah.
all the players, amazing. Comes over and she's like, "Dad, I want to bake a cake tonight, like 20 minutes before kickoff.
Oh
If they
wow.
call it kickoff in soccer, I think they do."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Yep, no worries, sweetie." So yellow icing and green writing, Matildas. Cool. All right, let's do it. So get the cake going. Everything's going well. Some buffoon who used the coloring, the icing coloring, put the wrong lid on the wrong coloring, and another buffoon. Actually, I was a buffoon in both cases. I've gone to pour the what I thought was yellow icing into the icing mix, not realizing it was
Oh
pink. I realized it was pink because my daughter was screaming it's pink. So then I thought, all right, well, I've got to go into MacGyver mode here. I've got to save this. So I get
yeah.
get the light green, put that in, hoping it would make dark green. Made it made like a poo brown color, and that's what we had to dish up was a what looked like a poo brown cake. That was the best we could come up with, but
Mate,
it tasted good. It looked
by
like
by
shit,
the
but
end
it
score, it's sort of what it was anyway. I mean, 3-1 to England. It's a bit of a poo score, so the cake fit, mate. Cake fit.
yeah, it
But
did. It did. It worked out well. But
no,
yeah.
very nice, mate. What was that beer like?
Mate, just had my first sip. It's heavier than what I thought, but it's quite nice.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, so just had the first sip. Of course, Asahi is always a classic. Love it.
Yeah, don't mind Asahi.
All right, let's chat a bit of rugby league. What we're here for now. We've been talking a lot of off-field stuff. A bit of fun with it. Something I wanted to touch on today is back to not so much the soccer, but sporting moments in general. what has been your favourite sporting moment over the years, all time?
Outside of league.
Yeah.
Um, some of my sporting moments, I go back to, I don't know why it just jumped out at me then, Joey, but Leighton Hewitt when he knocked off
Oh,
Pete Sampras in the US Open. I must have been 15, 16 at the time, but
yeah.
he beat him in straight sets as well. And he wasn't favoured to win. That's something that jumped out at me. Kathy Freeman was jumping out at me. That was like 2 years
That's a
earlier. I was
big
only like
one.
14.
Mm.
There's some of the more individual sports, but as far as the team efforts go, if I go back to rugby league, watching what Queensland did for 9 years in a row, 8 years in a row was pretty special.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if we look at rugby league, let's talk about some of the great grand finals over the years. Now, you've been on this earth a little bit longer than me, not too much longer, but a little bit longer. And we've seen some grand finals in our times. For me, a standout that I remember watching myself, because I am a lot younger than the average listener, was the 2002. Obviously, that's when I started following rugby league, but 2002 grand final. I remember the 2003 grand final really well. Roosters and Penrith, obviously the famous Scott Sattler tackle over the sideline. But I remember it because I was 7 years old and I was really starting to get into rugby league. And I remember crying at the end of it. I remember crying at the end of that grand final, knowing that the Roosters had lost after winning the year before. And mate, it was just something, it was special for Penrith. And that sort of, obviously, they didn't get another one till 18 years later. But what were some special grand final moments for you?
Joey, you've just depressed me. Knowing that you were 7, I remember that grand final. I wasn't, I must have been around 18, 19. I think I just turned 18 and was going down with a couple of mates to watch it at the local club. And the idea was just to go there and have a couple of beers. I still remember the bus stop I woke up at the next day for a good old sleep on the park bench. Thankfully, those
Oh,
days don't happen very often anymore. I was going to say anymore, but I should say very often.
yeah, yeah.
um, my '03 memory for you would be '97. I remember where I was at the time. I remember standing up because being Balmain boy, Balmain had played Parramatta in the reserve grade grand final the game before,
Uh,
and it was there was no success for Balmain in the '90s, especially in the late '90s. So we're now '97. And I was super excited to watch them play. But then obviously the next game was the game, Knights versus Manly, and went on to be one of the greatest grand finals of all time. But remember where I was, I remember standing up out of my chair, sort of screaming when Joey went down and passed it back to Albert. So that jumps out. And then Cowboys Brisbane is another one that I think tops it.
yeah, absolutely. 97, I was 1 year old, but that grand final, after watching over so many years and seeing the highlights and what that did for a town like Newcastle, there's certain towns in rugby league that just have that aura. You look at Penrith now, and I live in Penrith, and the town itself, like everybody loves the Panthers. They absolutely love them, and there's certain towns like that. I think growing up, we've seen that. You've probably seen that in Canberra yourself. Canberra sort of have that town, especially the early '90s when they were winning comps. The late '80s, early '90s when they were winning comps. I think the town itself really got around their crowd, and that's what Newcastle did. And it's something I've always liked about Newcastle is just that hometown advantage. It's quite scary if you go there and play because I mean, not so much these days, but back in those times when they were winning comps and grand finals and stuff, it was scary because the crowd that they got everyone. Everyone in Newcastle used to come to the game. I don't know if you know any other teams like that, but that's my experience seeing like Newcastle and Penrith now.
And how good is it that we're starting to see that with Newcastle again?
Yeah.
Like they've struggled for over 10 years on and off. Snuck into the semis a few times here and there, gone through some major changes. But Penrith, people forget Penrith was struggling. You've only got to wind the clock back 6 years, 7 years, 8 years. They were struggling. They couldn't get people to the crowd. So, I go back to, I don't always go back to 2005, but it was the 1 year. It wasn't like the Tigers had a Penrith era where we had 5 great years or like Melbourne Storm. We had 1 year And
Yeah.
the years before that were horrible. 2005 was the first time we'd ever made the semis. And then when we started getting that feel towards it, man, everywhere you went around the Campbelltown, Macarthur area, Balmain, Leichhardt, Ryde, it was just full of Tigers. I was in Canberra at the time, and I was driving up to Sydney every single week, and I'd been doing it the last 2 years anyway when I got my license. And you just felt it build, 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 and it's
Yeah.
sad when you get Campbelltown now because there's no West Tigers anymore.
Yeah, that's right. Well, the next part I sort of want to talk on, let's talk coaches, mate. And again,
Mm.
we've seen some great coaches over the years. For me, probably some standouts in my time watching. And you might think it's a bit biased, but Trent Robinson has been a really good coach for the Roosters. I mean, the Roosters have had a few great coaches, Ricky Stewart, Phil Gould as well. But what Trent Robinson has done, he's coached us for 10 years now, since 2013. Came into the comp 2013. We won the grand final and the minor premiership that year that he coached. 2014, we
Yeah.
won the minor premiership. 2015, we won the minor premiership. 2016, ran second last. And then we made the finals in 17. And then we won back-to-back comps in 18 and 19. And then we made the finals 20, 21, 22, and hopefully 23. But I think when you look at it that way, Robinson has had a lot of success. And he wasn't necessarily a great rugby league player. He only played a handful of games in the NRL and in Super League himself.
Played for the famous West Tigers in this year,
He
to be
did,
honest.
mate. He did.
One game.
Yes, yes. He did more of his trade in the Super League. But what were some coaches obviously coming through that you saw and you went, man, they're the best. Like there's no greater coach than this guy.
How do you look past Craig Bellamy? And I don't
Oh,
talk
for
about
sure.
Craig Bellamy now. I talk about Craig Bellamy when he was, coming out from under Wayne Bennett's shadow.
Yeah.
And mate, he was about to sign with the West Tigers for 2003. 2003. I'd never heard of the name Craig Bellamy before. And I remember back in the day before Facebook, social media, when the only way to get entertainment was Big Lead or the Sunday Telegraph, and it would be on the back page of the rugby league. And I remember reading this name. What am I? I was again around that 18-year-old age. And, West Tigers going hard under Craig Bellamy. And he got interviewed and said his son was finishing his last year at college and he didn't want to move from Melbourne. Sorry, he wanted to move from Brisbane. And that's the only reason why he knocked it back. We signed Tim Sheens. And a year later, Melbourne Storm signed Craig Bellamy for a year ahead. Had we had gotten that year, it could have been different, mate. We could have had premiership script from us, mate, for cheating. Like,
mate,
life could be very different.
What could have been? Oh, you could have had Cameron Smith, Billy Slater may have come.
Oh, mate.
Cooper Cronk might have come over to the Tigers, and you still would have lost them all to other clubs. But, that's just the Tiger way, mate. But look, sorry, yeah, go.
Bellamy, yeah. I was going to say Bellamy. Sticky's right up there.
Oh, sure.
Got a soft spot for Sticky. But I go back earlier. What Daniel Anderson, it's a real sad story where he's at in life now, but what he managed to do with the Warriors over in New Zealand, he really did help kickstart them. They'd been around for a few years, but he really did cement them in the NRL.
Yeah. We won't really talk about his coaching expertise at the Chooks. We didn't do great under Daniel Anderson, but he did really well with the Warriors. You're exactly right. And obviously our condolences to the family because it's been a pretty hectic time for them as late. But you talk about Craig Bellamy and who he came from, Wayne Bennett. And Wayne Bennett, the super coach, mate. Absolutely incredible. What he did, those early days of Brisbane, there was none better. There was none better. The way Wayne Bennett knew how to coach and get the best out of that Brisbane team. And you look at the players they had, the Walter boys, Alfie Langer, you even look at the Pearl, Steve Renouf, Wendell Saylor, Lottie Takiri, these guys that are just absolute superstars of our game. Darren Lockyer at fullback. What Bennett did to those boys, even in the later life, Corey Parker's his semi-Fridays, he was an incredible coach. And then to go and have success at the Dragons like he did was amazing as well. First year there, they win a comp in 2010, their first ever comp as a joint venture. Didn't have the same effect with Newcastle, but I think there was a lot of hierarchy stuff going on at Newcastle as well.
Yeah. And then he gets Brisbane to another grand final on his return.
That's right.
And people forget that he started his coaching career with the Raiders.
Yep.
And he was there when they lost the grand final. I believe he was there when he lost the grand final in '87, and he handed over the reins to Tim Sheens.
Yeah.
It's crazy to think they both coached against each other. Well, they would have coached against each other today, but Tim Sheens was officially stood down or resigned. So, but yeah, and I think it's hard. But on the spot there was a few clubs. I go to Nathan Brown. I think Nathan Brown was an unlucky coach. He
Yeah.
never had the player roster, and he was more of a I'm going to come in, clean out the house, and then hand over to someone and move on with it. So I think there have been some great coaches that have just been at the wrong place at the wrong time, or they've had to come and do that clean out work and then hand it over to somebody else. And
And often you don't see many good players turn into good coaches. Ricky Stewart's probably one that did.
yeah,
Him and Desi Hasler, they were really good
yeah,
players and turned into really good coaches. But you look at Wayne Bennett, a handful of games. Craig Bellamy, a handful of games. Trent Robinson, a handful of games. Ivan Cleary, I mean, he was an okay player. I wouldn't say he was the best. But these guys have turned into really good coaches and they got great footy minds. Just incredible to see. Mate, just want to quickly touch on this beer, mate. Oh, I am loving this. I'm about halfway through. How you going?
yeah, about halfway through. It's quite nice. Give a little bit of a jiggle, a bit of a wiggle. It's quite good.
That's the only way to do it on a Saturday night, mate. Now, let's talk on the topic of grand finals. Let's talk some of the best uh, grand final post match uh, speeches. We've seen some great ones. There's been a lot of swearing involved. A good club mate of your team, Chris Hyington, famous one. But yeah, take us through some that you remember.
Oh well, just that one stands out for obvious reasons.
Yeah,
But a bunch of boys from out west won a grand final that 6 months earlier were tipped for the wooden spoon, and I don't think there was much media training done that year for such an occasion because
definitely
I
not.
remember Matty Johns back in his days at Channel 9 walking around the field interviewing the players. There was Chris Hynington, Bryce Gibbs, whoever else it was, and nearly every single one of them dropped the F bomb on live TV. It was pretty bad. And then I think Scott Prince just wrapped it all up when he stood on stage and went, "Yeah, brah." And I'm like, oh, no. That was our moment that we waited for a very, very long time for, and that's the best he could deliver was "Yeah, brah."
I think it
So
was 2005 as well, mate. You sort of expected that back then. But one of the modern ones that I remember, Victor Radley, when we went back to back 2018, 2019, and they asked him, what was he going to do? He said, beers, beers, and more beers. Absolute legend of our game, Victor the Inflictor. So that was one I definitely remember.
yeah, that's good. You got to have a bit of character, so it's good to
Yeah,
have.
for sure. But there have been some absolute pearlers and some that you go, oh my God, how has this guy gotten up on stage or how has this guy been allowed in front of a microphone? But we're talking a bit of grand finals tonight and, it's been really good. Did you play in any yourself, mate?
Oh, Joey, what could have been? So I played in 5 grand finals across a couple of
Wow.
different sports, mainly rugby league. And yeah, 0 from 5.
Oh, 0 from 5.
Yeah,
Oh, you sound like
yeah,
a typical
yeah.
Tigers fan, mate.
Yeah, thanks, Joey. That's great. Uh,
I love you, mate.
yeah,
You know I love you.
I actually did win one as a coach,
Oh,
which was
beautiful.
nice. And that was with Raiders player Seb Chris in the team. So that was
Yes.
but player, mate, still burns.
Very nice. Well, I played in three, won two. Sorry to rub it in, lost one. Um, but yeah, I was a lot younger back then, 17 years of age. So it was the back end of my career back then. But no, grand finals. It's definitely pinnacle of rugby league for you. Watching footy, what do you think would be better, playing in a grand final or playing in a state of origin decider?
Mate, we ask that question all the time. And I think when it was around Origin, you would say Origin. When it was outside of
Yeah.
Origin, you'd say Grand. I would have to say, I mean, you can't go past winning Grand Final,
Oh,
surely.
yeah, for sure.
There are so many great players that played Origins and won Origins. They won World Cups, but they never had the opportunity to win a Grand Final. And then you got some players that won a Grand Final that were never ever going to be selected for
Yeah.
Origin because they didn't have that caliber. So Nathan Highmarsh is the one that jumps out to me at the moment. None from two, but yeah, I'd have to say the grand final with the Pinnacle for me for sure.
For sure. I mean, there's some big ones. You talk about your club itself. Paul Sirinen never won a grand final and played for Australia, played for New South Wales. I mean, incredible player. there was a lot of players like that that actually never won grand finals. So I definitely think winning a grand final is the pinnacle of the game. Mate, no movie tonight because the Tigers won, so you haven't thrown a chick flick on. So what's the plan for Saturday night? What are you up to?
Well, Joey, I've got the kiddies tonight, and we're going to watch the Matildas. But I was talking to some sick about the whole my favorite chick flick of all time, which we know is Notting Hill, right?
Yeah.
They're sort of like, come on. So they've given me some options to watch. Confessions of a Teenage Shopaholic,
Oh,
Mean Girls, and the old rom-com The Switch Up, which I think I've seen.
yes.
But yeah, knowing the suggestions that are coming through to me thick and thin. So, but can put it on hold for a week. So yeah, next week actually we should be 2 from 2 next week when I think about it. So
Oh, mate. Craig and I are against each other next week. Obviously, the Tigers and the Roosters.
your
Where
me- your message pissed me off too, by the way, when we
I know it did. I love it. It's
you
great.
fucking it's you're just so rooster arrogant when you're just like can't see his Whitlow. Oh, you're just typical rooster.
I look against any other team. I would probably say it, but we. So if you don't know the record against the Tigers for the Roosters, you've beaten us once in about 12 years, and that was 2018, and that was the
Is
last
that
time you
right?
beat us. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm not joking. So we have an opposing record over the Tigers. You beat us in 2018, 8-10. I remember the game. I think it was round one even. And
Hmm.
you beat us 10-8, and that was the only time you beat us in about 12 years. So yeah, it's a pretty big record for the Chooks, and that's why I'm so confident. I mean, I shouldn't be because we're not having the best year, but look, it's going to be good. Hopefully, Craig and I can get to the game, and we might even throw a video up on socials. But if we do, it'll be great. Mate, that's really about it for tonight. I'm just quickly going to have a sip of my drink, and I'll be down at that as soon as we finish. But I want to say thank you for tuning into Two Blokes, a Beer and a Podcast tonight. It was our third episode. Don't forget, you can follow us on Spotify under the Ruck Infringement Podcast, where you'll find the episodes there. We will be putting up a Facebook page. I just haven't got around to it yet, but I will get around to that. We will post Two Blokes, a Beer and a Podcast, all our content there. We are on YouTube as well, so jump on the Ruck Infringement Podcast. Check out the Two Blokes, a Beer and a Podcast playlist on YouTube, where you can see all the video here. We have lots of fun, have a bit of banter, you know, do this with your mates, get around it, enjoy rugby league, and don't forget to also follow the Ruck Infringement Podcast. Check out Craig. Craig runs a business, if you don't know, those that live under a rock now. Blokes Walk and Talk, BW&T. And just like to say, get around BW&T, check them out on Facebook and Instagram as well. Buy some merch, and it's all about men's mental health and starting the conversation and walking with your mates and getting that stigma away from that men don't talk. I think it's really important, and it's a great thing that Craig does. So get around BW&T. But that's about it for tonight. I'm going to go watch the Panthers hopefully beat the Titans. You enjoy the Matildas, mate. And remember, be good to your mum.
Thank you, mate. I'm going to go and cut this jersey off so I can breathe.
I love it, mate. All right. Goodbye.